High FM, 101.9 megahertz of life.
Let's talk about AfriForum and the EFF. So they've announced that they are preparing fresh legal action against EFF leader Julius Malema, alleging his recent comments encouraging people to occupy land illegally violates existing court interdicts that prohibit him from inciting unlawful land invasions. To help us try and understand the legal, political implications, we're joined by Gabriel Kraus, writer, analyst at the Institute of Race Relations. Gabriel, good morning, and thank you for joining us. Can you help to unravel this? Because there are a lot of things at play here.
Sure. How's it, Howard? I think the first thing to note is that the court order that the AfriForum got originally against Malema for inciting people to illegally invade land and trespass goes all the way back to 2017. So, I think it's been nearly 10 years and a lot of things have happened since. What then played out is that Malema tried to have the court decision set aside. So it's technically a rescission application, which is it means he has to cross legally a much higher burden even than just a normal appeal. And the High Court said no and made him, gave him a cost order, which means, this was a terrible idea on his part, basically. And the thing that's brought it back to light is that Malema has started doing this again. There was a recent visit, a talk, I guess you could say, a speech he made in Kayamandi on the outskirts of Stellenbosch, where he encouraged this illegal conduct once more. And so that means basically there's this court order against him. He tried to have it struck out. It hasn't happened. He sort of altered his language, I guess you could say, made it slightly more metaphorical.
Softened it.
And now... Yeah, and now he's gone hard again. Maybe he forgot, or maybe he has made a strategic decision. And so AfriForum saying, well, the court order needs to be enforced once more.
Do you think that politically, and I do want to come back to the questions of freedom of expression, etc., and history and all of that, do you think that this is more of a political move than it is anything else to try and get the EFF back in the spotlight? Because they have most definitely lost some of their brand value over the last year or two.
I think that's true. I think that, in a way, my reading, I think I've maybe shared it with you before. My reading is that the EFF, one of the most successful things Ramaphosa has actually done, and he deserves a lot of criticism for a lot of things. But when the EFF tried to do that mass shutdown a couple of years ago, the shutdown was itself shut down. And, these buses were interdicted that were going to transport 40,000 people around and tens of thousands of tires and ready to be set alight to turn lawlessness. And it was there was definitely the brewings of a 2021 unrest situation happening there, and it was just quashed. And for a fascist, I think the EFF is basically a fascist organization or proto-fascist organization. For an organization like that, whose core principles are race nationalism, destroying property rights, really bending everyone to their own will. I mean, their explicit constitutional mandate is to nationalize all property in the country. They've reissued that in 5 manifestos. So I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say that they have a program for total control.
Right.
An organization like that under a constitutional democracy like ours really is appealing in direct proportion to the appeal for completely overthrowing the constitutional democracy that we have. And so it is the appeal of lawlessness, and all South Africans feel that appeal, or many do in some way or another, whether it's having a drive after 2 beers or smoking a cigarette during lockdown when that's not allowed. There are a lot of crazy laws, and so a lot of people kind of feel like maybe we should break the law. But the EFF is about breaking the law in a brazen, open, very aggressive way, or at least that's part of its brand appeal. And that has, actually most people, when they're sober-minded, realize that it's much better to live in a law and order society where you're protected. And so it has lost a lot of appeal. It's trying to gin that back up, I think, by doing this, by saying go illegally invade land. It is definitely sort of testing the waters, and I think it comes at the same time as this Expropriation Act challenge, or close to it, in Cape Town, fairly close by. So that's a connection there too. And I imagine the EFF will be speaking tomorrow in the Cape Town High Court, and we'll have some of its supporters toying out there. I think they're looking for relevance, but it's a terrible fact, in my opinion, that relevance can only really be found given their constitutional values, their founding manifestos.
Right, but that's surely
trying to break the law.
Surely that is no. I can put anything I want in my manifesto, but it doesn't. It certainly is problematic if I am encouraging people to break the law. Freedom of speech, I would imagine, and you're the expert on this, surely is limited to inciting violence and encouraging people to break the law. Because you could argue for expropriation without compensation, no problem there if that's what you believe in, but there's still a legal process. It doesn't mean that you could walk into anybody's property and do whatever you want with it.
That's exactly right. So funnily enough, last night I was at a gathering of lawyers here in Cape Town, and I heard an attorney sort of argue in a case involved in this case that the EFF and the ANC should actually be not allowed to run in elections, and that would be a very bad kind of transgression of free speech. And the thought was, because they're encouraging expropriation without compensation, they shouldn't even be allowed to run an election. That's the wrong idea. People must be allowed to express their political views, and one of the great benefits of that is you can see how the electorate responds to it, and the EFF's waning chances, the ANC's drop, from nearly 70% down, way down over the last 15, 20 years. I think that shows, an important part of our evolving democracy. On the other hand, the common law for centuries has been very clear on where the limits on free speech lie, and our Constitution has codified that. Encouraging threatening people directly, that's not legal. That's not defended by free speech. If you say, "Well, I'm going to kill you if you don't give me the money," it's that's a threat. That's not free speech. And the same goes for inciting violence or inciting harm to people's property, inciting breaking the law, and that's the implicated conduct here. Whether exactly what Malema says that rises to that level is something that's going to be tested in court, and it's a bit complicated. I think a lot of people feel maybe a bit iffy about the courts because the flag was quote-unquote banned and kill the Boer was quote-unquote allowed. But if you get into the details of those judgments, that's actually a misconstrual. I think for the most part, the courts have done, when they've been given good arguments, which they haven't always been given good arguments, but where they've been given good arguments, the courts have censured people, including Malema himself, for wrongful conduct. I think there's some reason to be confident that the courts will police that line between free speech and true threats and true incitement properly.
Is there a way to revisit the Kill the Boer court ruling? Because that one has definitely caused a tremendous amount of issues. It cannot be a judgment that anybody in the legal fraternity is proud of.
Well, I think that it can, in a sense, be revisited. Basically, here's one question. If 5 people are in a public park and they are, they've had a few, they're letting their hair down, and they're singing songs of their past, and they sing that song. Or they're coming back from a funeral where some ANC veteran passed away, and they're singing the kinds of songs that they used to sing at funerals in the 80s.
Nostalgic,
and they sing that song. It's like, is the way that the thing was finally ultimately argued, unfortunately, was on that basis, like just basically a blanket ban. And I think that, the way to revisit this is if there is another event like Senegal, where you have an angry mob. The standard incitement thing is you've got an angry mob, you've got a leader, a ringleader. That person says, go kill those guys or go hurt those guys. And then the mob goes and does it. And that literally happened in Senegal. I mean, for the mob, and then the mob went to go attack the other guys. And those facts were totally abandoned. You can go and see it. It's online. You can see the oral arguments before the Constitutional Court. It really was a bizarre thing. So I think the legal fraternity, in that case, it's not the court that did the wrong thing. It's the guys who are accusing Malema who kind of they try to bite off more than they could chew in the end. Anyway, the way it can be revisited is if there is an instance where there is an angry mob, whether they go on to hurt anyone or not. If there is a case where there's a reasonable expectation that if you go in front of that mob and you say this thing, that is the result that you're going to produce. That's the legal standard for incitement, and it's the same standard here as in America and Europe and Japan and whatever. It's like a very common standard, and if that standard is met again, and the challenge is taken forward on the particular fact, then that will be tested, and if that standard is met, then that conduct will be unlawful. That singing of Kill the Boer will not be allowed.
And that is where we leave it. Absolutely fascinating conversation, and no doubt one that is going to become an important one during the next few months, especially as we head towards elections. Gabriel Kraus, writer and analyst at the Institute of Race Relations.